Hi, my name is Jamani from Brooklyn, New York. I think in Java. I have been using Java for over 15 years. We are covering Barebones Java.com GWT tutorial series. This lesson covers the features and debugging with Super Dev Mode. The first thing we're going to look into is how the Super Dev Mode is configured in Eclipse. So just as we did with the classic mode of developing GWT, let's go inside the configuration for an Eclipse. So we go to run configuration, and first thing we see is an error. And I'm gonna discuss what that is. That's okay for now. We'll get rid of that. So we go to the run configuration. First thing we see, there's the main tab. We have the sample project, and we have the main class that's dev mode. That hasn't changed. Again, the server hasn't changed. The server port 88. GWT, the tab GWT, which defines the development mode. Of course, now that we're using Super Dev mode, that's checked. Port where we serve the code is 997, and we're still using the sample GWT.xml. Nothing has changed here. The app engine I'm not going to talk about. However, I need to talk about the arguments that's being passed, the program arguments. The program arguments that's being passed to the for Super Dev mode. Of course, it's a parameter called Super Dev mode, along with the remote UI that we saw before in the classic mode. So that's pretty much the biggest difference that I see, at least on the configuration side of the Super Dev mode. So I'm going to close out the run configuration. So let's start looking at some of the key features of the Super Dev mode. If you go to the GWT Google Project site, let me drill down to how you get to it. I already did that, but let's go through it. If you go to GWT project, you don't go as documentation. It's in the resources. Resources, articles, Super Dev mode. And but I highlight the key features that you see. The biggest thing that you see, if you go back to the browser, is that the size of the URL, the application, I shut it down. The biggest thing that you see is the parameters the number of parameters that are passed to bring up the GWT Super Dev mode. No longer do we need the code resource. In a normal, let me show you. In a normal application, we pass. I'll just show you here real quick. Along with the sample app URL, we also pass the code server, the GW code server. We don't need that anymore. This extra parameter, we don't need that. So in Super Dev mode, the only thing you need is the URL for the sample application. So that's one. Two, you notice that if you go back to the documentation, the article on gwt.project.org, it talks about adding some extra parameters to the XML, the entry module XML. Since I'm using version 2.661, all you need to add is add linker reference. So I'm just going to copy that. If you use it earlier than that, you have to add everything. I mean, all the extra parameter information. So if you go back to I probably added it already since we kicked it in Super Dev mode. No, it didn't. So we have to, well, I'm going to stop the server instance, that, and then enter this extra information here. And one more thing is mentions is that when we launch Super Dev mode, it's going to recompile. We saw that before. And there's one more thing we have to do is to actually go inside Eclipse and configure Eclipse to handle debugging. Because no longer do we do our debugging and testing in the actual Eclipse IDE. We actually have to do it inside the browser. So what happens with super dev mode, which it talks about, is that the difference is that the code is actually shown up. The actual Java code comes up on the browser side. So you no longer do you need to do, well, you see the code both on the IDE. As basically you see all these sample code, the sample Java code that we have here, that will show up on the browser side. So there we're going to add the breakpoints like we did here in IDE, but we don't do it here in Eclipse. I'm going to leave we have a breakpoint here in the code itself from the last lesson, and run it and see what happens. But we'll get there. But the point is, although we have a breakpoint inside our Java code, it's not going to see it. We have to add the breakpoint inside the browser. That's another thing. Because now the code now is moved over in the browser side, so debugging happens in the browser. That's a good thing, because the goal of GWT is to take our Java code that we see here and convert it into JavaScript, a standard J2E application, as you see here. When we generate the Java code, all this Java code becomes JavaScript, and therefore Chrome is a great JavaScript debugger. So if you bring the code over to the browser, the turnaround time in development will be increased. To me, I like it. I think it's a nice thing. So we fixed the XML. Now let's go inside Chrome and add this feature that they mentioned. So if I bring up my Chrome browser, I select Chrome settings, the actual settings, settings. Oh, I'm sorry, not exactly settings. If you go to Chrome settings, the setting, and you have to go to more tools, and you choose the development tools, and the development tool pops up. And let's move this tool down here if you can. Well, anyway, the development tool is right there. So there's another option where we click there's one more option of setting that we have to do. The setting inside the actual let's bring this let's close this. Let's bring up the setting, the full-blown setting. Expand it. Settings for development mode. There are two options. You enable the JavaScript source map, which talks about on the site. You also have to enable source map, the CSS. It looks different on my Chrome, because they talk about they talk about let's close this. They mention that you have to set the show script folder and enable script source mapping. The only places I see anything has to do with script folder and source mapping is that those two options. So we'll go to development tools, setup. So enable JavaScript source mapping and enable the CSS source mapping. That's the only two options. But anyway, it'll work, because I've checked it out and it does work. So these are the two things that has to be checked. And by default, they normally check them. So once we've done that, we have our Eclipse setup and Java and the Chrome setup. We're good to go. So make sure our console is up. Let's debug in super dev mode and see what happens. So if you go to run, select the sample application. We're going to debug it, debug as, and we choose super dev mode. And we select open with Chrome. It does this thing, it compiles. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to partly open up the application so I could show you the console for Eclipse, and also the console for actually and then not Firefox, for Chrome at the same time. But the point is, once you run in debug mode and also Chrome on the application of Chrome, the application comes up and it runs. And we are running in debug mode because that's how it started. and we have a breakpoint. In the prior classic mode, it would have stopped right here for us to, and we would have to go through a trace debug and debug application. So it didn't do it in super dev mode. So how do we debug and within the application? So if you go to Chrome, more tools, now that we have the application, we go more tools, development tools. There's a couple more tab that opens up, which should be the source tab, sources tab. As you can see inside the sources tab, what comes along is the sample directory. And not this one. You got to go to this the one, not 8888, 9876, because this is what's serving our source code. Actually, the dev mode. Let's go to run configurations, GWT. Where notice on the run configuration for Eclipse, it says that it's serving the source code on port 99. Although we're running in dev mode, I wonder what happens when transit 96. The actual default for super dev mode, the code is being served at a different port. In this case, it's port 9876, which is a default. So 98 is where the code is being served up. So as you can see, we have the code up and running, the actual code for our application. And they talked about the source map thing and the sample code. So we go inside the source map. That's where we have the actual Java code. So I'm pulling up the wrong one. We need only a sample code. It even brings up the GWT Google basic project that you come up with, the super user kind of thing. So it brings that along. So we've got our Java code now on the browser. See, as I mentioned before, now our Java code is in the browser. We can set breakpoints inside the browser and also do some debugging. So if we go put a debug I'm looking for the button that says, here we go. The button that says send me, just like before, which is at line 42. Put a breakpoint there, which is by clicking where the line numbers are at on line 42, where it says the button. You do that, and you refresh the app, refresh the browser. Guess what happens? Yeah, there we go. It stopped at the breakpoint in the browser. And you can go and do the same process of navigating through the actual breakpoint. You can even set expression, look for expressions. But the only one I wanted to show you is that the actual debugging is done in the browser. So we're just gonna follow through and go through all the application and click it, and it's gonna do the send me process again. So that's the development mode, and that's the debugging mode and super dev mode. The debugging is done inside the browser. So next we're going to do is finish up our demonstration and conclude with the super dev mode. So what we successfully done is to actually bring our application up and do some debugging in the browser.